So, what if the entire modern banking system, the bedrock of our economy, was actually built on a single, brilliant, and, well, deceptive idea? That's the provocative argument we're digging into today. This isn't just about numbers and economics, it's a story, a history of a clever trick that ended up changing pretty much everything. This one sentence. This is the whole argument in a nutshell. The claim isn't just that banking is a tough business, it's that its very foundation is a crime. Now, that is a massive accusation, so let's unpack how the author actually builds this case. I mean, how do you even lend money that doesn't exist? Well, to get our heads around this, we have to go back a few centuries. And our story doesn't start with bankers in suits, but with goldsmiths at their workbenches. Right, so picture this. We're in the West, way back when. You've got these goldsmiths. They weren't bankers, just skilled artisans. But they had one thing nobody else did, really, really secure vaults. So naturally, people started trusting them to hold on to their most valuable stuff, their gold. It all started out simply enough, right? You'd drop off your gold for safekeeping, and the goldsmith would hand you a paper receipt as proof. But after a while, they noticed something, a pattern. People almost never came to get their actual gold all at the same time. And that's when the light bulb went off. What if? What if they issued more receipts than the gold they actually had in the vault and lent them out? And here's where it gets wild. People quickly figured out it was way easier and safer to just trade these paper receipts directly instead of lugging around heavy gold coins. And just like that, without anyone really planning it, these simple little deposit slips became the world's first form of paper money. And that right there, that's the heart of the trick. The goldsmiths had figured out how to create money, literally, out of thin air. They were lending out promises on paper, collecting real interest on them, and in doing so, they'd stumbled onto the core principle of all modern banking. What the author we're looking at doesn't just call this a clever trick. No, they have a much darker name for it. They call it khayanat, which translates to the great betrayal. And they argue that this single act is the original sin that the entire financial system is built on. Because when you boil it down, this was a massive breach of trust. People thought their gold was just sitting in a vault, safe and sound. They never, ever agreed to let the goldsmith use it to run his own side hustle and make a profit. So, according to the author, this wasn't just good business, it was a fraud that eventually became the norm. Okay, so a few guys pulling a fast one is one thing. But how does this little trick get scaled up into the global financial system we have today? Well, the game changer, the thing that poured gasoline on the fire, was the Industrial Revolution. Think about it. The Industrial Revolution needed absolutely insane amounts of money to build factories and railways, way more than a few rich individuals could provide. So, you see the rise of these joint stock companies pooling together everybody's savings for these huge projects. But the real switch was how they loaned the money. They moved away from sharing risk and profit to something new, the fixed interest loan, or the debenture. And this changed everything. With a fixed interest loan, the lender wasn't a partner anymore. They were an outsider who was guaranteed to get their money back, plus interest, their pound of flesh, even if the company they loaned it to went completely bankrupt. The risk was no longer shared. And all of this leads us right to our doorstep, to the modern banking system. This is where the goldsmith's little trick isn't just a trick anymore. It's been perfected, institutionalized, and turned into a global machine. So let's peek under the hood of a modern bank, as the author lays it out. The owners, the people who started the bank, might only put up a tiny fraction of the actual money, say 5%. So where does the other 95% come from? Well, it comes from us, the public, our savings. But, and this is the author's critical point, while the owners might only provide 5% of the cash, they get 100% of the control. They're the ones who decide who gets a loan, which businesses get to grow, and what happens to that massive pool of public money. The system that allows this is called credit creation. It sounds complicated, but honestly, it's just the original goldsmith's trick on steroids. A bank doesn't just lend out the money it actually has. It's allowed to lend out a multiple of that amount, creating new money with every single loan, and of course, earning interest on all of it. So, you build a system like this over centuries. What are the results? What does it actually do to society? Well, according to this text, the consequences are enormous, and they concentrate an incredible amount of power into very, very few hands. The text really doesn't pull any punches here. The argument is that this system effectively centralizes the wealth of an entire nation and puts it under the control of a tiny group of bankers. This, in the author's view, isn't just business, it's a form of financial dictatorship. And what does that control really mean? It means that by deciding who gets credit and who doesn't, by turning the money tap on or off, this small group can effectively direct the course of industry, commerce, and even politics. They become the gatekeepers of the entire national economy. The author paints this really powerful picture of a spider's web. Commercial banks control the economic life of the country, but they themselves are controlled by something bigger. And right there, in the absolute center, pulling all the strings, are the central banks. And this brings the whole story full circle, with a final, really pointed comparison. We used to despise the old village moneylender, the sahukar, right? Everyone saw him as an open exploiter. The author asks, what's really the difference between him and the modern respected banker? The argument is, not much. They're two faces of the same coin, except the modern system is just much better at hiding the mechanisms in plain sight. And so we're left with this one big question. If we accept the author's story that the global financial system wasn't born from pure innovation, but from a foundational deception, how does that change the way we look at everything? Our banks, our money, our entire economic world? It's a powerful thought to end on. Thanks for joining us.